G'day, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Scouting Australia podcast, powered by Australian Property Scout Buyers Agency. I'm your host, Sammy Gordon, and I'm joined back in the virtual studio once again by the big silver dog himself, Mr. Jimmy Ibrahim. Welcome back, mate. How are you?
Boy, yeah, it's good to be back. Hello to all of our community out there, mate. I know I haven't been in the studio recently. You've been subbing me out. You're starving me of opportunities on the first 11, but you know what? I'll take it.
You look good on the bench. Tracky, no actual gear, so people can't see your skinny white legs and your arms, mate. You look good in a trackie. It suits you well. Maybe you should become a manager and just take the back seat for now. What do you reckon?
Actually might. I've got the grey hairs for it, so I will. But it's good to be back on the show. I've been loving a couple of the other potties with Lukey. There's a few little comments there I've got to take up with you and Lukey. Okay. Don't think I don't listen to those. When I'm if I'm not on, mate, I am listening to all the dribble that's coming out. You're never on.
Let's be honest, mate. You're never on. You're never on point. But, mate, everyone's been asking. They want some more Q&A sessions, so I thought it'd be a good little opportunity for you and I to get back in the virtual studio, mate, back on Zoom and punch out a session, mate, just to answer some of the listeners' questions, man. One thing, though, that I want to throw out there, guys, is we can see the community consistently growing. Guys, this is our first ever month. We're over 10,000 downloads in a month, which is epic. So I just want to say a massive thank you. We can see that the community is obviously growing consistently as well, which is what we really want to see. Keep sending it on. You take value from each episode. Please keep sending it on. It's going to help keep building your inner circle. So once again, guys, thank you for helping us get to over 10,000 downloads a month. And that's only huge. That's only 4 reps a month. Like, that's insane numbers, man. So
surely there's no one else doing that. I mean, that is pretty.
I don't know, mate. I don't know. Maybe not at that speed. But Jimmy, mate, thank you as well. It's been a great little journey.
Oh, I think I'm probably 9,000 of them are due to me. But
we're talking about your age, or we're talking about the Gandalf's had a bit of a run here. Anyway, mate, Q&A.
Let's get into it. I love the Q&As, as you know, because our listeners
don't know much, and you want to learn some stuff,
mate. They're passionate. The audience is passionate. Everyone's trying to stump the bull shark.
Good luck.
So we're going to do our very best today. I've got a whole bunch of great questions. Tommy, our producer, has been going through Instagram and our email. So let's get straight into it, because our listeners, they're keen to hear from the bull shark himself. So this first one's from Ignatius.
Big Ignatius.
Top fella.
Mate.
Good bloke. Hey, guys, love the podcast and have listened to every episode.
Thank you, mate. What a legend.
Question for you. When you do your next Q&A, Ignatius, you're on. Do you recommend, is it part of the strategy for your clients to not pay down the debt on their portfolio and let the capital growth naturally reduce the LVR over time? If that's the case, Sammy boy, each time the portfolio is refinanced, is it always on interest only? What a way to kick it off.
That is a great question, Ignatius. Great question. Do you remember the Jack Black movie? What was the movie? He was out in he was the wrestler. That dude, his name was Ignatius. I can't remember the name of the movie. Yeah, Nacho Libre. It was Ignatius. Oh, I was trying to remember what it was.
Ignatius.
That was a classic movie. Yeah, anyway, mate, moving on. I was trying to remember.
Ignatius wants to know.
It is a great question. It's a great question. Look, mate, when I build a portfolio, be it my own or within clients as well, I have always, actually, I won't say always, the very first property I ever bought, I bought it on P&I because I didn't know any better. Interest only always allows you to kind of build that portfolio and not be hamstrung kind of by your cash flows at the same time. I'm a big believer that, especially with bread and butter style deals, your interest only component is what you really want to run, because you want your cash flows to stay solid while you build it out. Your intention with a bread and butter property should always be to sell it over time anyway, because it's not a high yielding, high net cash flow deal. I don't actually see the point in holding that thing long term. So what you want to do, which is what we've always spoken about, is kind of buy that thing in, get a great discount in a great market, ride it to, say, peak of a market, and potentially sell it off at the top as well, right? If you're going to do that, and let's say it takes you 5 to 7 years, I'm not someone that like wants to carry something with like a heavy negative cash flow because you're on a P&I loan for 5 to 7 years. If I'm going to sell it anyway, I may as well, if you've got the excess cash flow that's coming in, you can sit it in offset. So it's still kind of sitting there paying down the loan, but it's also there as like usable funds for additional deals, and also for the ease of holding that property during that journey, during that piece as well. When you get a little bit further along the journey, you can always look to flip some of your high cash flow deals over to a P&I loan if you want to start to reduce them. But I would always say during like a heavy accumulation period and during like accumulation windows, you want to keep your portfolio on interest only, because it just enables the cash flows to be far superior on that front. A lot of people have asked me in the past as well, what about when my interest only period finishes in a 5-year window? Like then everything rolls over to P&I and I'm screwed. That is definitely not the case. Like 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to refinance it over to a different lender, or even re-roll with the existing lender into an interest-only period again. Or if your market's done well enough, you may even sell it off before that kind of happens and before that comes through anyway. So, mate, Ignatius, it's a great question. I always look to build the portfolio initially through a interest-only strategy.
I like that, Sammy boy. And even, can we just talk quickly just on the actual interest rate? You know, some people get really fixated on, no, I need to get this, and they're actually bypassing what they're actually trying to do, is which to accumulate. So what would you say to people there that are really, you know, anal about the exact interest rate and trying to shop around for a little percentage here or there? Would you say keep the bigger picture of, if you're trying to accumulate, what's actually going to get you into more deals? Because that's the biggest challenge for the majority of investors.
Yeah, 100%, man. I very rarely take like even if it was a bit of a variance of a 0.5% or 1%. I mean, 1%'s a big amount, right, in the scheme of things. But if you're limited with capital and you've got the ability to go buy 2 properties at 88% lend as opposed to 1 property with an 80% lend, and it's going to cost you an extra 0.5% or 1% to own that property in terms of an interest rate, every day of the week, I'm taking the 2 deals over 1. Because there's a simple analogy I always use when people ask me this question. It's like, man, if we can make you 25 grand on the way into a deal, and then let's say in year 1, let's say one of your deals is, or let's say, sorry, you could have bought 1 property at 450, or you buy 2 properties at say 350 because you've used your capital for that. You've paid a bit of a higher interest rate, whatever. And let's say your 2 350K properties, you make 25 grand on the way into each of them. And then you get 35 grand's worth of capital growth. You have 10% capital growth in your first year. You just made $60,000 per property.
Per deal.
25 on the way in, 35K of growth. That's 60 grand per deal. And let's say you paid an extra 1% in interest for the right to do that. And that property costs you, in the current market where interest rates we're obviously at a peak in terms of interest rates at the moment, or very, very close to it. Let's say it costs you 2, 3, 5 grand a year to own it. Every day of the week, I would take the 60 grand win over the 5 grand loss, like in exchange for the 5 grand loss every day of the week, because then it compounds and builds over that as well. So, man, I think I've been thinking about actually doing an app on this lately, because and actually drilling really deep down into this as well, because it's something a lot of people are getting fixated on at the moment. I wouldn't be interested. I wouldn't care about it at all. Another great example is, sorry, man, I hope you don't mind me stealing your thunder here, but on this as well, in COVID, man, I took a lot of low doc lending. When people were getting rates in the high 2s or 3%, man, I took on a lot of low doc lending at 5% interest rate, literally like 2% above everyone else. And it was, people at the time were calling me crazy. And I'm like, nah, man, like we're at an absolute bottom. I got a good feeling the market's going to kick. I'm getting a great deal. All right, I'm paying a bit more in interest, but the property's still taking care of itself, or just about.
That's right.
Then I bought about 10 properties on those 5% interest rates, and all of them pretty well doubled in like a 2-3 year window. So like $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 worth of growth on each deal in exchange for paying an extra 2% in interest. You know what I mean? Like it was an opportunity cost at the time that I fully embraced, and it's massively paid off.
And you just refinanced those back out anyway, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you got the benefit of it.
I carried them for about 2 years. It was about 18 months, 2 years. And then I refied them all back out, and I actually fixed them all back in at like 2.5% for 3 years. So I was laughing on that.
That's why they call him the bull shark, ladies and gentlemen.
Took a bite out of the banks.
So good. A bite out of the bank. That could be a segment in itself. Take a bite out of the banks.
Take a bite. Take a bite.
All right. I think you've nailed that one, Sammy boy.
Ignatius, mate.
I'll give you full points for Nacho Libre.
Nacho Libre.
All right. The next one from Colin Simons. You know, Big Cole?
Big Cole. He sends in questions quite regularly. Big Cole, mate.
Actually, this one links into the first question, Sammy boy. Ooh. So this is, hey, Sammy, really enjoying your podcast and the great banter between you and Jimmy. Keep up the great work. Oh, thanks, Cole. Good fella. It is
Some people call it banter. Other people call it a decimation of the old boy himself. But anyway, moving on.
It is my understanding that you have accumulated approximately 40 properties. Is that true?
Good counting. Yes.
10 of them being dual occupancy, giving you around 50 separate incomes. The question is to you, Sammy, how often during the 13 years that it took you to accumulate this portfolio, did you sell properties when they were at their peak of their cycle and reinvest the money back into a new property to take advantage of the new growth cycle? So basically, have you turned over hundreds of properties to get to the stage, hundreds, to get to the stage where you are now holding the portion that you have? Or have you mostly implemented a buy and hold strategy?
Great question. That is loaded.
We're digging into the Bull Sharks portfolio.
Wow, all my little pups, my little bull pups, they're swimming around beneath me with little secondary pups on the grannies.
So first question for you, what is the current portfolio at the moment? How many properties do we have?
A little over 40, and then there's circa about 15 additional rentals on those as well.
15 additionals?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're about 55.
Yeah, 50 to 60, somewhere in there.
50 to 60, okay. Now, so basically what he's saying is over the 13 years, did you sell certain deals at their peak?
So if you go back, I think it was it was the last portfolio review we did. Portfolio review or portfolio Sammy Gordon
6 to 10 properties.
Yeah, the episode number 3 in terms of portfolio breakdown of my own journey, right? I went down the first sale that I went through. To give you like an overview as well, Colin, without giving too much away for future portfolio breakdowns, I've only ever sold 2 properties in my lifetime. And normally I sell them when I I want to retire debt or need to retire debt and get a nice portion of capital back out of a deal to be able to recycle, roll on, and keep moving. I've been very fortunate in the way that I built a portfolio that my portfolio has always been very strongly geared, like heavily positively geared. And I also leverage in a very intelligent way through things like trust structures. So when you make big wins out of the portfolio and you can strip capital back out and then understand the lending scenarios that you can do when you move through trust structures and whatnot as well, that's where I've been able to really build quite aggressively. A lot of people know this, that I built majority of my portfolio, or more than half of my portfolio, over 20 properties before I was actually a buyer's agent or able to use my company income. So, you know, a lot like it is very possible to still build yourself a large portfolio on a low income. You know, I never made more than $100,000 a year. And even that was at the back end of my PAYG days. A lot of the time most of my journey was between kind of a 50 to 80K income. It is through intelligent investing and intelligent lending and having a really good focus on cash flows and yields and whatnot as well, and building that out in the right way. So yeah, man, to pretty much break it down, I've only ever sold 2 properties. And yeah, it's more about intelligently investing and putting the money in the right structures to be able to keep moving forward as well.
Can I ask you though, Sammy? And I know we mentioned this.
Man, building in like multiple cash flow streams. That's a really big part of it as well. So like you can't do it just continually buying like singular income properties. They're great to build the base, and having those bread and butters are a key part of the exit strategy of what we look to do. But having those multiple income streams and that very high net cash flow as you start to build a much larger portfolio becomes super important.
So a couple of questions for you. So for Colin, you really need to listen to that podcast that we did do, and Sammy will explain to you why he sold his property in Sydney. But you sold it very strategically, that first deal, because you were stuck, right?
Yes.
If you recall, and for people that are listening, your portfolio was at a point where you couldn't move and continue to accumulate. So you took a sidestep, reduced debt to then allow you to create, I think you were negatively geared on that portion. Then it went to positive by, I don't know what it was, 50K or something.
Yeah. I kind of turned around once I sold that thing. It was about $10,000 a year negative, and then the 2 properties I put into the portfolio after it kind of boosted it up to being around about, it was literally like a $50,000 a year net cash flow turnaround position. So it was huge, man. It was huge.
So the point for the listeners out there is, if you're looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sammy boy, but if you're looking at whether you should sell your property or not, it's basically coming down to, where are you at in your portfolio? Like, are you stuck? And if you do need to take a sideward step, or you do need to pull back to improve your serviceability, then that's a very different conversation. And that's what happened with you early days, right?
Well, that's exactly. I got stuck. I literally had to sell. It took me a year to make that decision because it was my first property. I never meant to sell it. Great memory, by the way. I'm surprised you can recall that one.
Mate, elephant memory, this one.
Memory sieve. But anyway.
Don't forget.
But it's one of those things, mate, that these days, like the way I look at it is like, once a property is maxed out and done what it's needed to be done, even if you don't need to sell it, but if you can retire that debt and recycle that capital and move your money into a different market, something that a lot of people don't realize is like when a market goes on a full run, when a market peaks out and you can sell it at the top, that is where there's super demand. A market never peaks out and stays at that value. It never happens because it peaks when the demand is at its peak.
Demand, that's a key word.
Is demand at a peak. When the demand comes off, the market comes off. It always happens. And it doesn't need to be a huge amount. It could be 10%, which obviously at whatever price point you're at is still a significant sum. That's where if you can time the exit, that's perfect. But if you hold it beyond that for one, you're going to come off the boil anyway. So it's going to come back a bit. But if that market's already done its run and it's peaked out in terms of affordability and incomes and like everything else that's going on in that area, if it's peaked out, my honest opinion is like, what's the point of still holding that asset? You can retire the debt, recycle that into additional deals, get that cash back out, recycle that into more deals. You're going to be able to springboard your portfolio forward much more than if you just held it and because you got to remember it's also like an impact on your serviceability. So it may not affect you yet, but in 12 months or 24 months, it's like, oh shit, that now I'm getting impacted by this, but I can no longer sell it at a peak. That's why it's always really important to sell these deals at a peak if that's part of your overall game plan and exit strategy, like we work with our clients.
Final point from me then, for you in your portfolio, obviously you've bought a lot of high cash flow deals that have enabled you to continue to buy and you're not stuck, so you don't have to sell. So that leads into my last question about this one is, are you not selling anything now because you don't feel that the markets that you're buying into have peaked or have reached peak demand? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So
you're not at your exit, or you're not at your exit point where you want to de-risk your portfolio.
Yeah, it's a couple of points within that. There's a few spots that like had a great run, decided to still hold them because properties in Brizzy that I had a great run on. I have no real need to sell them, but there is still demand that's going to come over the Olympics in the next, say, 8 to 10 years. I know that demand's going to be there and they're going to keep growing. So I know they're going to keep growing. So I had no real reason to sell them at that point.
Okay.
But then if you look at a market like Adelaide, Adelaide is going to be peaking at some point in the next couple of years. I probably will look to sell off my bread and butter deals that I have down in Adelaide at that point as well. Everything that I hold in New South Wales is either cash flow deals or they have the potential to be redeveloped or be higher and better use cash flow deals as well. So hence the reason why I hang on to most of those.
All right, 2 from 2. Hopefully that answered that, Cole. There was quite a bit of juice in that, Sammy. I like that one.
That was good. Right, I like Cole as well. I'm going to throw out to Cole a big shout out here. I know he gets his kids to listen. His kids actually listen to this, and he's educating his teenage kids in property at a very early age. So he's dubbed as Colin, the Robert Kiyosaki, Mr. S. So I won't throw the last name in there, but there you go, mate. Well done,
Cole. That's awesome. That's awesome. That, mate. It's never too early to get into property, really, is it? Is it? Or it's never too late.
It's never too late by your example. You got there before I got there. You're quicker,
mate. I'm onto it today, mate. I am on.
You're about to jump off the back of the boat. You could see me coming to get you.
All right, Lukey B is the next question. Hey, guys, loving the podcast. It's been on repeat in my machines for months. He must be a
machine, Lukey.
You must be a heavy machinery operator. He's given us his situation, Sammy. Just a quick snapshot of Lukey's situation. Single income.
Sessions. Let's go.
Single income family. He's a FIFO worker on 140K. He's married, got 3 kids. Currently renting for $500 a week, but looks like that rent's going to go up to $600 very soon. The pickle is they had about 35K ready for a deposit. They had a few little issues and so forth. Unfortunately, that money's gone back down to zero. They're in Australind, Western Australia, which for those people that don't know, down near Bunbury, a small little town. It's had a lot of growth in the area and where they are renting. So the question is, and this is from Lukey, should we bear down and try saving our deposit again for possible rent vesting? And that'll definitely take a while due to a single income now because he's got a young child, young family. Or should we jump into a low savings house and land package close by and let the house prices do their thing? So rent vesting is very appealing as an option, obviously due to family reasons, or do they go in for the house and land package?
Yeah, so this one's a tricky one because house and land packages are not my cup of tea, right? So like a lot of the time, house and land packages guys are buying, because this essentially house and land package is generally off the plan. You're normally buying it through a developer or a project market or something like that. Very similar to like an off the plan unit.
And 2 years, it usually takes at least like a year or two.
Because normally your land's a little bit away from being registered.
You're agreeing to the price now for something that you're going to get in a year or two.
Which sometimes can work in your favor, if your market's in the right, right point in the cycle and whatnot, it can work in your favor. But just realize you're always going to be paying an overinflated price. And that's typically because those project marketers have their margin built into the deal, which is typically quite a lot. A lot of time, guys, for transparency, it can be like 40, 50, 60K built into a deal that you're literally paying. So look, mate, the way I would look at this, and by the way, guys, I gotta always throw this out. Not financial advice. This is just my take on what I potentially would look at with your situation, and this goes for every app, every question that comes through. Okay.
Yeah. Don't come chasing the bull shark.
You'll get bit. So if you were going to do it and you wanted to take advantage of grants and being able to get into some like potentially lower sort of deposit entry price sort of things, the one thing to remember, if you're going in and buying something, it's like a developer kickback style of thing that they're helping you to get into something because of that. There's always more loaded into the price than you're getting back. Always realize that. You're never getting anything for nothing from a house and land perspective, okay? My way of doing it, or the way I would look at doing it, is if you go back to not episode 1, but Sammy's portfolio breakdown 1, that in there shows how I did my first ever buy and build that wasn't a house and land, but I did go and source the land separately, and then I went and sourced a builder separately. The one thing to note is we are in a very, very different environment right now to what that was back then. Back then, the market was in a lull. There was a land glut, so I could negotiate on a lot of different blocks of land to get something really, really well priced. And builders weren't, going through rapid price rises and all the rest of it as well. If you were going to do a house and land, I would be doing it that way, trying to source my own block of dirt and source my own builder, because then okay, well, there's an end product down the street, or what I'm living in right now. I know I can buy the block of dirt for this. I should be able to build for this, realizing that build prices are increasing. You should be able to see if you're making a margin on it. Mate, I wouldn't be doing it. It's exactly the same fundamentals as everything else. I would not be doing this deal unless you knew you were making money on the deal. Just don't let your emotions kind of catch you up in this thing. A lot of people do that with a home and a build. Don't let your emotions come in. If you want to do this thing and you're actually serious about investing, you have to look at it from an investment numbers perspective. But if you're going to go down the build route and house and land route, that is the way I would do it. I guess going back to the actual nuts and bolts of the question, would I be actually going down that option, or should I just try and save and get back into the scenario?
Into the reinvesting.
Yeah. What would you're making 140 a year. You're not on a small income. I know you've got 4 dependents, being the wife and the 3 kids as well, and you've got the rent. I know it would be hard for you, mate, to be able to save up again. If you actually budgeted where you're at the moment and all your outgoings and everything, and you think you could save yourself like 50 to 60K in a year, which I know is a lot, mate. But I'm not sure if you're on any sort of, government support or whatever for the kids and whatnot too, to help on that end. But man, depending on how long it would take you to save yourself like 50 to 60K, man, it probably would be a better option to potentially look down that avenue instead of get yourself to that point. Can I really knuckle down and get there in 12 months because of the income I'm on? May not be possible. If you could, I prefer going down that option, because I know once you go down that option, that is a scalable option. Whereas when you go down like a build route, you got to wait on land registry, you got to wait on builders to do their thing. Both of those are blowing out massively at the moment. It might take you 3 years before you actually get into that house. It'll be at least 2 years, not potentially 3 years. That's the way that I would be looking at it. So I'd kind of look at both options. If it would take you 12 months, you think you could get there for a deposit in 12 months for a purchase, then yeah, man, that's something I would probably be leaning towards that. Just me personally, if it was my situation, that's what I'd be leaning towards, trying to go down that route.
And further to what you're saying, Sammy boy, I mean, if we were to look beyond a year, right? Let's just say we had both of those types of properties, and you start thinking one step beyond the first step, and ask yourself, how many options do you have? Because I know you always talk about, make sure you understand the next move before you do the first one. So if Luke and his family are thinking about this, if they are to get into and do the rent vesting and get into a really good bread and butter deal or a growth play, the reality is he's going to be in a much better position in 6-12 months time, recycling a bit of equity. He's obviously saved for the first one, so no reason why he couldn't save again.
Yeah.
So theoretically, the snowball effect could potentially be better. Is that fair to say? Yeah,
I feel like the scalability and the snowball effect of what's actually possible if he did go down this route, I think it would be a lot stronger. Rather than something that's it is a long way potentially on the horizon. No guarantee he's going to make money on the build either, but that's yeah, man. They're sort of things I'd be factoring into. Whereas if we knew we could save a certain amount in say a 12-month window, we know we could replicate it, because even if you didn't go so strict on saving for the following 12 months, instead of saving 50 to 60, maybe you save 30. You save 30 in the following year, but then you've got capital you can pull out of the first deal.
That's right.
And the second year, you might be getting another 1 or 2 properties. By the time you get into the third year, man, you're scaling this thing. You're scaling this thing properly. So I always follow something that I know that I can do properly, rather than something that's like a bit of a pipe dream, not really a guaranteed sort of result at the back end.
Yeah, the house and land. I mean, we're not sure, are we, in a year's time, what that's actually going to look like. So that's a really good point. Can I also just make a quick point about house and land package deals that I've noticed from chatting to various clients, right? And this probably will get you thrashing in the shallows a little bit, because it seems to be when people say I bought a house and land package from this company, this wealth creation company, and then they say, I actually think it was actually the developer, like a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
Have you noticed that? I mean, what a blood boiler. So it's almost like they're trying to package this investor route, but it's really the developer just taking a little clip, an extra clip.
Guys, I would be very, very wary of listening to anyone that's offering you a house and land, be it a broker, an accountant, a wealth advisory system, whoever the hell it is, a buyer's agent. If anyone's offering you a house and land package, ask to see the contract and ask them very directly, like, what are your commissions on this deal? Because a lot of it, like, that is where a huge amount of this sort of thing comes in. There are always commissions built in on this side of things, and people act like, and financial planners as well. I don't know if I threw that in there. There are good financial planners out there, but there's a lot of them that do this, and it's literally like, it is a ridiculous money-making machine for them. I don't even know how it's legal. How can they recommend something that they're getting that big a kickback on? But yeah, guys, something to be very, very wary of. In the last couple of years, a lot of people have, like, it's softened the blow of how bad they are as an investment, because there has been a lot of growth, especially around capital cities where they were selling a huge amount of house and lands, and even some regional areas. But if you wind back, remember, I've been doing this for a while now as well. If you wind back to kind of 2-3 years ago, before that boom sort of kicked in, there were a lot of people that have been burnt significantly by house and lands. If I tell a story, actually, people would remember the 2-3 weeks ago, I did the ep with Nick Wilcox on his portfolio.
Yep.
A lot of those properties we went and bought out in Ipswich, where we were buying them for 280, 290, 295,000. They had been sold as house and land packages by financial planners to their clients for 400 to 450K in 2007 and 2008 off the plan. And here I am buying them 12 years later for $100 to $150,000 less. If that isn't the biggest learning curve of house and lands, and to be as wary as possible on those style of deals, I don't know what is. And I'm not kidding. 280, 290, 300,000 was what we're paying for these things that people had paid 400 to 450 grand for 12 years earlier. Literally, it used to make me a bit sick, because I felt like literally bad for these people, how much they were losing.
Yeah, that is insane. I mean, we are looking to always mitigate risk with any investment, right? So if you just think about what is mitigating risk, why would you factor in something that's 2 years down the line that you're not really sure of, right?
Let me throw something in there as well, guys, real quick on this.
Get him going, folks.
This is where I say, if you want to build a community and have people around you that are thinking like-minded, and you've ever got anyone in your circle that's like been really wary of, oh shit, I did that, or maybe my parents did that, or my parents are thinking about that because my financial advisor is recommending it, send them this podcast. Tell them to, I don't know, fast forward to wherever the hell we are. We're 25, 30 minutes in. Tell them to fast forward to this segment of the podcast, listen to this, and that example of the 450 and what I bought them for at that point. Be extremely wary of that, because it happens a lot, and I hate it.
Okay.
Moving on.
That was a good one, Lukey. Thank you very much. Okay, from Lukey B to Jacob B. They're not brothers, are they?
I wonder if they're brothers.
I wonder. Maybe.
Maybe.
Question. He actually runs his own business, Jacob. With the extra money left in my business, after I pay myself and my wife a wage, do I pay out a dividend and pay a little bit more tax to go towards a deal? Or do I put it into a self-managed super fund and work towards a deal within that? Well, there's a bit of detail missing from here, Sammy boy.
There's a lot of detail missing.
It's a pretty hard one to answer.
Big Jacob B, mate, you're a legend. I don't have enough info. I don't have enough info. So, like, man, like the way, there's way too much you're missing. So, man, even if you want to send it through, we can jump into it another time. But, like, man, I need, like, how much are you making in the business? How much are you paying yourself and your missus?
Do you have any properties? Like,
do you
where are
have
you
an
at?
existing portfolio? Like what's the situation in that sense? And in terms of putting more into the SMSF, you can always put more into the SMSF.
Well,
And
that's
go
if he
down
has an
that
SMSF set up, Sammy boy. He can
Yeah,
contribute to his obviously his super fund.
yeah.
You know, like I think it's 27.5 grand as a
You can put in every year,
you can
which
top
is
up.
which is a great strategy, and like you can really ramp up your portfolio with what you do on that front as well. But yeah, man, it's one. Sorry, buddy, you've left way too much out of it for me to know, and how I would structure that myself as well. If you have a good accountant as well, it's a good thing to chat to them if they are a good accountant from both a business and a property perspective on how to structure that properly. But man, that's one of those things. Like, I have a lot of like really creative ways of how we can really fast track and really boost and build this thing as well. But yeah, man, it's sorry, buddy, you've left too much out for me to be able to answer this one properly.
So come back to us, Jacob. We're going to reach out to you to get a bit more detail. But and for all of our business owners out there, just think there's so many different options, isn't there, Sammy boy, for business owners to really leverage on. And I know you've got something cooking in the pipeline in relation to that. So hold your hats, folks. There's some value. There's some value. The shark cage is out.
Shark cage. The shark cage. Drop straight into the shark tank. Let's go. We're moving on.
I think this is the last one, Sammy boy. This is the last question because we want to keep it tight. We want to keep it tight. And we thought, why not finish off with Ester-Louise? She is a regular. She's one of our faves.
She loves sending in the questions.
The reason
she loves loading it with multiple questions.
She loves it. She loves a good bit of value. Now, the reason why I left this at the end for you, because I feel like the big bite might come right here at the end. Esther says,
have I evolved into a great white on this one, you think?
Well, time will tell, mate. Time will tell.
Megalodon bully.
Esther said she's had a conversation with another very well-known buyer's agent today. Well, that's the first bit of burley in the water. They've made several points which I found interesting, but definitely don't resonate with me. Wow.
She's doing a bit of inside intel research work for us.
Perhaps you could break this down, Sammy boy, of what they have said and also give me some reassurance. So I've got 3 points for you, Sammy. First one.
Let's go.
This is the point from this other BA. You're wasting your time if you want to purchase properties under 300K. Oh, jeez, look out.
Absolute idiocy. Send me his name. I'm send him a message.
Oh no, because what they're saying, Sammy, is that why aren't you wasting your time? Why aren't you wasting your time if you're purchasing a property under 300? I'm not saying this is an idiot.
I'm saying this guy's an
idiot. I know. I'm talking. I'm just rolling you up a little bit. I'm getting the burly circling. I'm dropping a few blood drops in there.
I thought you were dropping something else for a second there.
So why would someone say that?
Okay, so the reason why this is absolute idiocy is, can I ask you something, Jimmy, mate? If you could make $250,000 in 5 years, 7 years, would you be happy with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, you wouldn't knock it back, would you?
You wouldn't knock it back. What if you could 50% of that was capital gains tax exempt? Would you be pretty happy with that? So 125 grand you haven't paid tax on, and then the other 125 you pay a little bit of tax on. Would you be happy with that?
Well, depends on what else you would be doing, but yeah, you wouldn't knock it back again.
If you're buying a deal for $250,000 to $300,000, and then you're making a gain of say $250K, you know what I mean? Like, it's
I'll take that.
The reason exactly.
Sign me up for two. Utah, give me two.
You're already on the books, mate. Take it easy. But like you look at all the examples, right, that we've given, and the reason why this question, not this question, but this statement, right, by the other buyer's agency is idiocy is. And I actually have this all the time where people will call me in strategy sessions like, oh, but I spoke to this guy like, a few months ago that we were thinking about working with. And he said, oh, if you buy anything under 600 grand, like it's not worth, like, unless you can buy something over 600 grand, it's not worth your while. And I'm like, that's just stupidity. Everyone starts at different points in their journey. You know what I mean? Like, you look at my portfolio and the first property I ever bought, I paid $275,000 for it. The reason why I asked you, Jimmy, like, would you be happy with 250 is because this wasn't even that high performing a property, but in 7 years I sold it and made $250,000. I bought it $275. I sold it for $525. I made $250,000 from a sub $300,000 property. Now, it is completely achievable to repeat that and do that in other markets. And we did it a couple of years ago in Brizzy. Like, you go back and you have a look at, and in Adelaide 3 years ago, you have a look at like young Liam Montgomery from a few maybe a month or two ago in his portfolio. He paid $190,000 it was literally 3 years ago and just sold it for $390 grand. He made $200,000 in a sub 3 year window from pretty well doing nothing on that deal. Now, if you're starting from a lower point, like if you go back to Lukey B from before, right? Let's say he goes out and his first deal, he saves his ass off for 12 months and can go out and buy that first deal. That's a $300,000 property. And in 3 years, he's made, even if he's made 100,000, or in 12 months, he makes himself 50, 60 grand, he can pull it back out and roll into another deal. It's the foundations of a portfolio. Like, obviously, if you've got the ability to spend a bit more and go a bit bigger, and you want to stretch into the $400,000-$500,000 mark, there's nothing wrong with that as well. But if you're limited and you can only buy up to $300,000, to say it's a waste of time is absolute idiocy. This guy needs a slap. Like, it's just, it literally is stupidity, because you never know where someone's starting from.
That's right.
And if that is your leverage point to then roll into more deals, mate, you're leaving your future on the table by not starting and building in that bracket.
Okay, so that's for someone who doesn't have the money, right?
Yeah.
So you get that. If they can only buy it, you're better off buying something than not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
But secondly, if you do have the money and you have the option of buying a $550,000 property compared to a property that may be around the 300s or low threes, what would your thought process be? Like, is there still value, or some people going to think, well, if I can afford 500, should I just buy 500?
So the big issue with buying something at 500 is a lot of the time you start getting capped with yields, or not. Like we invest a lot in the $300,000 to $500,000 brackets. We also buy in the 200 to 300. A lot of clients need to start in that bracket to really help them build and start ramping their portfolio. But we typically invest within the $300,000 to $500,000 bracket. The difference of buying a property at, let's say, 350, 400,000, and you can rent it for, let's say, 400 grand, you can rent it for 500. You go buy something at 600 and you can probably only rent it for 500, 550. Like, your yields a lot of the time don't move too much. Your rent doesn't move too much when you go up by 100, 200,000. And so the reason why you want to do that is you can diversify your risk, diversify the portfolio, keep the yield strong, have more eggs in either the same baskets or in similar multiple baskets in different locations as well. There's just a lot of extra spread and stretch that you can do at that lower price point. And the yields is your oxygen, right? Like, it's your lifeblood, especially in a higher interest rate environment like this. Every day of the week, I would prefer to build in the 300 to 500 grand bracket than $600,000-$700,000 plus,
because you can continue to accumulate. I think is essentially,
you can hold them with less stress and pressure.
Well, if I can just jump in on this one, just for Ester-Louise, because as you know, Sammy, one of the properties I bought for $541, I paid $541 in 2015, which is the blue chip property. And I mentioned this on this podcast, but again, and the properties that you've bought me are between probably 285 and 375, I think. That one that at 540 is the best looking house I own, but it's the worst investment that I own, because it hasn't enabled me to leverage. It hasn't enabled me to get into more deals. So even the value of that deal compared to all the other investment properties is insignificant. So I've got you've got it. There's a lot of people who have real life stories of this. So don't let anyone bullshit you about that, because it's ridiculous. I find it fascinating too.
Guys, it normally comes from someone who also, and I don't know who this person is, right? But a lot of the time, something like that comes from someone who doesn't actually know what they're doing, or they've never actually built a portfolio from the ground up in the lower entry price pointed point, right? Which a lot of people starting out, they have to build in that. That's what they can afford, and that's where they typically have to build. So yeah, the people who are saying that, it's almost like they're detached. They don't actually understand. Maybe they've only ever invested in Sydney, or they've only started in the last couple of years or something like that. It's a very novice and ununderstanding sort of way, I guess. I don't know how exactly to word.
Well, it doesn't tie in with the strategy that you adopt. I know that. So, all right. So I think we've answered that, right? So that's the first one for Ester-Louise. Second one, only purchasing capital cities. They are consistent. That's the next question from this buyer's agent from Esther. What is your take on that?
So regionals can always have a great run as well. I am a massive
look at COVID.
Yeah, man. But even if you look outside of COVID, right? Like, I'm a massive believer in metros, right, and capital cities and whatnot as well. And the bulk of my portfolio is in capital cities. But I actually significantly regret, like, a lot of regional locations that I looked at. All the data points were there. Everything was there. I got on the ground, trusted it. This is a lot of time pre-BA. And then didn't pull the trigger on it because it wasn't a metro location. I was like, it's not going to. And then the thing doubled in like 2-3 years. You know what I mean? Because there's so much, like, a surge comes into the area. And a lot of the time, what you see happen all the time in your regional markets to even larger regionals, 20, 50, 100,000 populations, when they get a surge, there is such a condensed, like a micro housing market there, even if it's 50, 100,000, whatever it is, it's a micro market compared to like a 2 million person capital city or a 6 million, say, of Sydney. It's such a micro condensed market that when the pressure comes in, it explodes. All you got to do is look at, you look at areas like even in the last 2 years of say like a Toowoomba or a Ballarat and a Bendigo and areas like this, and they weren't booming so much because of COVID. They were booming because of the lifestyle sort of changes that people were decentralizing. COVID obviously gave them a kick, but yeah, like a lot of these areas had a massive run that was pre-COVID and before COVID, and just kind of followed through as well. It's just it's another silly comment. You look back, there's plenty of reasons and regional markets that have outperformed the averages. And a lot of the time, if you haven't got the opportunities in metro locations, or maybe budget permits you to not be able to buy in a metro location, again, you don't not buy because you can only afford to buy in a region. Right. You're probably going to get a better cash flow in a region. You might be able to get a better discount. And if you're buying in the right region, you're also going to get a great run as well.
Would you think that this particular question is loaded towards buying the one type of property? Because when I read this, I'm thinking he's just thinking of growth. He's not thinking about yield or cash flow,
he's thinking about what he can sell easily.
That's right.
And also, last question as well,
not thinking about the strategy, and obviously that doesn't. He's not looking at he or she is not looking at what type of property do I need? Because if you're going after a certain high cash flow deal or a certain yield that you're trying to achieve that ticks the box of what you need at that point, and if that is in a regional market, why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
So, all right. So debunked number 2. Now, if we didn't roll him up for the first 2, folks, hold your hats, because this one might just tip him over. It might get him out of the.
We're probably lucky we're recording this one virtually, I think, Jimmy, mate. You want me to lashing out on this one? Go on, smack us with
the last one to finish us off. This is the from the BA. I don't encourage my clients to buy renovators. Make the money on the way in. Yeah. Any renovations will end up losing value over time.
That is just like, it's like a trifecta of idiocy. Like we should. I will pay for this guy to get a tattoo, and it's going to be idiot on the forehead. You know what I mean? Like to say that there's no money to make in renovators, it's just ridiculous. Like a lot of the time, like make the money on the way in.
Hasn't he watched The Block?
Hey, what's that?
I said, hasn't he watched The Block?
Oh God, let me slap you as well.
So that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Mate, the amount of money you and I have both made on renovators, that we've gone out there and knocked over and done together, man. And like you look at even a lot of the time, again, like he's literally just going, I know exactly what's going on. He's got a certain market that he's very comfortable buying in that's probably sitting above 500 grand. It's a capital city, and he wants to buy something that he doesn't have to help anyone do any work with, right? So it's just quick, clean, easy, doesn't need to do anything. Like this is the hard work that a good BA should be doing to be helping you set up your portfolio, ticking the boxes of these different things if it's what you need in your portfolio. But renovations, like to say that there's no money required, there's no money to be made on renovators. Like if you're like, even in terms of like losing value over time, especially if we're looking at bread and butters and you want to buy a bread and butter and the idea is to flip it at the peak of a market in 3 to 5 years, it's still going to be pretty good. Like, you know what I mean? Like you've got an original property, you've got a renovated property. Which one does everyone want? You know what I mean? There's always going to be more demand for that renovated property. And you're going to be able to sell it easier. You're going to be able to lease it better during that period. You're going to be able to buy it cheaper because it's a renovator and it doesn't appeal a lot of the time to home buyers or to potentially investors that may not be able to do it themselves or don't trust themselves in terms of project management. So you can normally make a nice margin on the way in, give yourself a nice little, make another nice little equity gain from the renovation as well. You're going to get a better rent. You're going to get a better tenant. If you sell it in those next few years, you're going to get a better resale on it. And if you do like a bathroom and a kitchen, bathroom and kitchens will normally stay in pretty good nick for a 10-year window. All right, let's say you hold it for 7 to 10 years before you flip it. You might need to do a refloor and a bit of a repaint or a bit of a tart up around here and there. But in that 7 to 10 years, you're going to have a heaps better period of holding it during that phase because you're going to have better tenants. People are going to look after it. You know what I mean? Like it's
also maybe he's getting confused with overcapitalizing because obviously you don't want to overcapitalize with any reno that you do, right? It's got to be specifically targeting what you're chasing, right? And so I think what this particular BA might be missing out on is that by doing a certain renovation, it might tick a box that we need in order to keep accumulating.
Yes.
So like for one of my deals, as you know, we did a full reno on the house that changed the rent from $350 to $685.
Yeah.
That deal alone from the bank is like, and I only spent what?
Say that one again, mate. Say that one again.
So
the rental just changed. Just say the rental change.
The rent from $350 a week to $685.
So virtually
on the house alone.
Virtually doubled just on the house. How much was the reno?
$80,000.
$80,000 to get an extra $335 a week. That's a 400 and something X return. Thanks, buddy. I'll just put the stamp of idiot on your forehead and wrap that conversation up.
So yeah, that sounds pretty ridiculous, but you're right. They must be looking at their own sweet spot. And why wouldn't you want to layer strategies on any deal? It's like in anything you do in life.
That's what I was just about to say. Like,
why wouldn't you want to have multiple strategies that you could execute?
Yeah.
The more tools in your trick bag, the better you're going to be.
The more strategies you layer on a deal, the more compounded effect and the compounded return you're always going to get. So you buy below market value, you give it a bit of a facelift, a bit of cosmetic reno or whatever. You buy in the right market. You've obviously made equity on the way in. You've made equity through a renovation. You've made equity through capital growth as well. And then you're going to get a higher and better yield with a better tenant. You know what I mean? And then if we go on the back and throw a granny out the back and get your dual incomes, if that's the play on the deal as well, like layering strategies is how you win. Just a bit of a plug for you, Sammy boy, because that deal that has $685 in the front house, that does have a granny out the back that is renting for $375. So talk about an APS Australian Property Scout manufactured cash flow deal of the week. Deal of the century.
I mean, that just goes to show you. I mean, the power of those kind of deals that is available to people by doing that strategy. I mean, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it? So it's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
What a way to finish. I think
mate.
I think you've covered it, mate. I think we wanted to keep it at 30 minutes. We're about to hit 50. So objective achieved.
Objective achieved. All the listeners, we know you love it, guys. We know you love it.
No, but there was some good nuggets there. I think you did really well. We didn't get you right out of the water into the boat just yet, but
I tried to hold back. There's been a few too many explicit episodes lately. I almost went down I just went down the idiot route with the stamp on the forehead for that.
I was a bit surprised there. I thought there was a lot of blood in the water. I thought, look out, this is going to end up being real
saving
ugly.
it for later. I'm saving it for later. I'll get there a big gym sesh later. I'll save it for that. All right.
All right. Well, mate, what a great episode. To everyone out there, keep writing in, right?
Keep writing in. Guys, we want to keep the questions coming in. Anything you want answered, make sure you're sending it in and we'll throw it on these potties and make sure we cover it for you. So any questions you want answered, make sure you're sending them in and we can dissect it on
put detail too, Sammy.
100%, guy. Great point, Jimmy, mate. There's 3,000 years of wisdom with that one, Gandalf, mate. Appreciate it. Make sure there's a bit of detail, guys, so we can answer your questions properly. Keep them coming in. We're going to run Q&As once a month, guys. We know you guys are loving it. You're all sending in, thanking us for them as well. We want to keep answering your questions, keep building that knowledge base. Once again, guys, really appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're enjoying it and you haven't left us a 5-star review or a testimonial yet, please do it. We really appreciate it. As I said at the start, guys, this community is really, really growing, and all I can do is literally thank you guys for that, because that is you guys sending it on, doing what I've asked you to do. Is if you take value, to please send it on. Anything you took out of this you think's great and you think it might help someone in particular in your circle, or someone that you may know, please send it on, guys. It's going to help you leverage up, build the knowledge base of your inner circle, and that's going to enable you to become a bigger and better investor and have better conversations with the people you're surrounded with. Remember the old saying of you are the value of the 5 people that surround you. You want to lift everyone up that's around you that you think you can help in this space, so that you start having these higher level conversations. You jump on, you listen to these potties, you want to build that so they're the conversations you're having with your inner circle. Okay, guys? If you need any help sourcing properties, building out strategies, going all down that route as well, guys, always feel free to reach out to us at www.australianpropertyscout.com.au. Keep your requests coming in. If you got the questions and whatnot as well, guys, in the link to this, in this email, when you read through, not the email, bloody podcast, you got the section there, you can click in, read more. There is the APS email that you can send in there to send in your extra questions. Alternatively, go to us on the socials at Australian Property Scout on Instagram and Facebook. Send through your questions there through direct messages as well, guys. Otherwise, guys, another great Q&A. I really enjoyed it. Jimmy, a.k.a. the Silver Dog himself, a.k.a. Gandalf, aka everything else. Mate,
Legend.
great having you on.
Mate, I can't wait to see you in
Ah,
person.
I know.
The tussle.
The tussle will be
I'm
on.
looking forward to it. Looking forward to it.
Guys, thank you once again for tuning in. We love you, have you as listeners. Until next week, guys, that's another Scouting Australia podcast. Take it easy.